Okay, so now we are going to take some time to talk about the competition. We're going to identify key competitors in the intro to IR market and understand where CQ Press fits in relation to that competition. So let's dig in. Look at this beautiful spectrum that my colleague Scott Greenan has created for us. Behold your spectrum of IR titles. This will help you to segment your market into two major fields: analytical and rigorous on the left side at the top, and descriptive and student-friendly on the right. And you'll notice where your CQ Press titles are located in yellow. The level of academic rigor can also refer to the amount of theory used in an IR text. As many of you know from our last NSM presentation, now uses a good amount of theory through the book in its causal arrows. It's considered a highly theoretical and analytical text, and it would pair up well, especially with Friedenreich and Schultz from Norton, or the Blanton-Kegley title from Cengage. Peavey House would also work well with when paired against the Now book. While the full Peavey House, I should say, but then the brief Peavey House would actually end up pairing better with Scott IR, as you can see down in the bottom half of the spectrum. So Scott IR falls more in the descriptive student-friendly portion of the spectrum, as you can see. It still includes theory, but in a much more approachable manner and not in the amount that now refers to theory. The Scott IR text would actually be best paired up with the Minx title from Norton that we'll actually discuss in depth in just a moment, or even a title like Roskin from Pearson. So, some interesting and important facts to remember about our competition. So first is about Pearson. So Pearson is losing market share in IR. We know this. It's time to pick up the takeaways as they try to force conversion to loose leaf and to Revel, right? So they're trying to force everybody into these different formats, and a lot of instructors are not happy about that. Pearson has also made some serious cuts to its sales force recently. The sales force is shrinking and actually moving inside, which may open up some opportunity for you as well. Now let's talk about Norton. So as Pearson loses market share and Cengage fails to revise titles like Kegley and others, Norton is beginning to pick up that market share. We need to block their sales and other smaller publishers that are actually making a move in IR. So let's talk about Roskin. This is a title that's actually falls very close to Scott IR on the spectrum. The New World of International Relations. It's published by Pearson, and like Scott IR, it's on that student-friendly side of the spectrum. This book is only available in Revel, or by combining Revel with a Pearson a la carte print component. Though the price for this edition may be about $20 less than the previous edition, not everyone's going to really be happy with being forced into the new format, as I'm sure you all know and have seen out on campus over the past year. Pearson has reportedly lost market share in IR over the past few years, so now is the time to pick up that low-hanging fruit. This title is Vulnerable. This text surveys key events in world history, as well as fundamental theories to trace the international system's evolution and to make assumptions on our future. Each chapter focuses on a single country or region as an example of a particular theory in IR, grouped into parts by theme, such as developing areas and global political economy. Roskin emphasizes the behavior of great power actors throughout history and how their interactions have changed up to the present day. So that's Roskin in a nutshell. But let's kind of take a look at what Roskin looks like compared with our Scott IR. So compared to Scott IR, Roskin is shorter, but it has more chapters. Scott IR has a brilliant visual program, which will account for the slight page increase. So that's the reason why we're a little bit longer. It's really the graphics and the charts and all those visual components that reviewers really love. But the format of Scott, remember, still fits the typical 15-week semester. Roskin is a more country and region based in its contents. Remember, we talked about it having chapters that specific on particular countries and areas like Russia, Latin America, Europe, and Asia. It's also rather US centric, bringing content back to how it affects America in the end. Meanwhile, Scott IR takes a more global perspective on teaching IR, giving favor or attention to no single region in its table of contents organization, but rather sticking to bigger picture topics: war and peace, security, economy, theory, human rights, etc. In that vein, Scott has more emphasis on social systems and activism, a unique styling feature that increases student interest over Roskin's focus on history. The books aren't completely dissimilar, though. There is actually a lot in common. So, like Scott IR, Roskin contains themes of security throughout the book, though more on military security rather than on human and economic security. So Scott takes a more holistic view of security, which you kind of just heard the authors talk about. What does security mean to individuals? And that's so much more beyond just military security. But whereas Roskin really focuses on military security. Also, geography is emphasized in both Roskin and Scott IR. So if you are talking to a Roskin user and they like that about the book, then you definitely want to show them our feature called Revenge of Geography. All right, the next book that we want to talk about is Minxed. This book is from Norton, and it falls a little closer to the theoretical analytical side of the IR spectrum compared to Scott IR. But it's still a direct competitor. This book has a focus on clear explanations of core concepts and the application of traditional theories of, you got it, realism, liberalism, and constructivism. So it's pretty traditional in its approach. The new 8th edition, which is coming out in October of 2018, brings a new co-author who has refreshed the text and includes new chapters on international cooperation and international law. Minxed is one of the less expensive texts available, again, because it is from Norton, and also comes with a set of digital resources that will include inquisitive material for the 8th edition. So just be aware. So let's look at these two books comparatively. So compared to Scott IR, Minxed is longer, but has fewer chapters, right? So we have 14 chapters, they have 11 chapters, but they are a bit longer than ours. Scott IR still fits a 15-week semester and is dedicated to organizing its chapters in shorter, manageable lengths to accommodate student reading patterns. Minxed relies on a theory-based approach in which each chapter is organized by realist, liberal, liberalist, or constructivist, or radical takes on particular topics, such as the realist versus the constructivist view of NGOs. Scott IR, however, takes a very introductory approach, bringing majors and non-majors up to speed on theories needed for the course. So again, Scott is a student-first approach, assumes zero prior knowledge, really meets majors and non-majors alike where they are at, and brings them along from zero to understanding, especially when it comes to theory. So a much more approachable approach to theory. The Minxed book also includes an emphasis on the relationship between the state versus the individual. State here, again, meaning the country. Scott relies on a thematic approach based on the quest for international economic and human security, topics which drive each of the three main parts of the book. Scott integrates more pedagogical features which provide extra insights and opportunities for students to make connections with their own lives. There's also more content on environmental security and transnational activism, topics which each occupy a whole chapter in Scott IR, but only 1/3 of a chapter in Minxed. So if these are areas that your instructors are interested in, environmental security and transnational activism, you definitely want to point that out in Scott. Remember, inquisitive with Minxed is new to this edition, so watch that carefully. So now actually let's take a minute to look at the difference between our books and do some internal differentiating. So we've got Now and we've got Scott IR. Now is in its 6th edition, and Scott IR, which is new to CQ Press, is now technically publishing in its 3rd edition. Remember, it came to us from Cengage. So it does have an established base. It is in its 3rd edition. These are our two main titles for IR, and they are both quite different. Now falls close to the end of the more academically rigorous analytical side of the spectrum, and is a perfect fit for a more challenging IR course and more upper level schools that offer IR. Scott, meanwhile, is a more descriptive and student-friendly, student-first focus, an excellent choice for classes that are mixed both majors and non-majors. And like we say, it assumes zero prior knowledge about international relations and international conflict. Now focuses heavily on causation. Remember causal arrows from the last sales meeting? On causation, theory, and history, which occupies all of part one of the text. But it's also very objective, allowing students to choose theories that help them explain the causes of international issues. There's an emphasis on the application of traditional theories or perspectives, such as realism, liberalism, and their role in explaining everyday debates. Scott IR utilizes a framework focused on the quest for security and the challenges of anarchy, diversity, and complexity in modern international relations. More attention is paid to connecting the experiences of today's students to current global issues. Again, it's that student-first approach with more pedagogical features that encourage students to consider their place in the connected world. Scott is for majors and non-majors looking to get a grasp on world affairs and go from zero to confident. And any of this that we're talking about with Scott IR, if you need a refresher, if you need a tool to help you articulate the story of Scott IR when you're first getting out there and talking about it, please reference the infographic that is going to be in your selling kit when you get to the sales meeting. We're creating a beautiful infographic that is going to really illustrate all of this, the student-first approach, the journey that these students go on from zero prior knowledge to confidence and understanding in IR, the whole concept of this quest for security and how that becomes a meaningful framework that helps create relevancy for students, which is so important in this course. All of this is going to be in this beautiful infographic, which you are going to have in your hands when you hit campus this fall. So just know that you will have some support when you get out there and start talking about this amazing, wonderful, very exciting book. Okay. So that concludes our competition discussion. I also want to mention too that in addition to the infographic in your selling kit, you will have a complete competitor grid that has all this information, not only about the specific direct targets that you're going after, like Roskin and Mingst, but also all of the competition that's out there. We'll have that spectrum that shows the analytical, theoretical side of it versus the more student-friendly side of it. Of the spectrum and specific information about all of those titles that will help you really win against your competitors when you get out there this fall. So stay tuned for that. So right now, just kind of keeping in mind all of that competition that's out there, we want you to just take a few minutes to go into CRM and find your top 3 IR targets for spring. Look at your largest political science departments. Perhaps you've even planned these opportunities already in your campus planning. Find those top 3. If you want to do more than 3, please go for it. And really what we want you to do is just note the competitive book in use, okay? Make sure that you know that. Keep that in the back of your mind when you come to the sales meeting. You're going to have a whole session on selling an IR, and we want you to be keeping those 3 specific targets in mind when you start to dig in with Linda and the sales managers. We'll be there to help as well, okay? So just make a note of it somewhere. You can make a note of it in the Blackboard course here, jot it down somewhere, or just at least keep it in the back of your mind so when the time comes, you have something really concrete to work with. Thanks a lot. And that concludes the international relations section of your seminar. Congratulations for working hard and sticking with it. And take a break, and there is more to come.